SR TV, you're welcome back. Still counting down to day 0 when Nigeria switches to an All Progressives Congress-led government, led, of course, by President-elect Muhammadu Buhari. In the run-up to the handover, many issues have gained relevance. The PDP, in recovery mode, seems to be taking stock of what made Nigerians reject them this time around, while the APC, in get-set mode, seems to be dealing with the reality of a never-ending litany of people's expectations, ranging from basic bread and butter issues to the more intricate matters bordering on legal and constitutional matters. We at Sahara TV are opening up a debate on several of these issues before day 0. And today we have invited Professor Itse Sagay to throw some light on some of these issues that we mentioned. Professor Sagay is a distinguished legal practitioner. He's a professor at law and a human rights activist. You're welcome to Sahara TV, Professor Sagay.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time, sir. First of all, Professor, do you see any legal bottlenecks in this transition going forward, switching from a government that has been in power for 16 years and a government that is just about to taste the first first bite of power, if you will? Do you see any constitutional, legal problems?
No, I don't see any at all. The transfer date is 29th of May, and as long as the Chief Justice is there and swears in the President-elect that morning, maybe around midday, that's it. The changeover has occurred, and we have a new government in place. So there's no legal obstacle whatsoever that one can imagine right now.
I see. Let me backtrack a little and ask you, sir, how did you receive the news of a new government coming into power? Were you prepared for it?
Absolutely. I was one of those very, very much in favor of Buhari getting elected, because in fact, we saw a change of government as the only chance of survival for this country, which has just been going down in every way, in every sector, economically, in terms of corruption, in terms of power. In fact, what was happening was that we had a group of people who did not have any interest in the welfare of the people they were supposed to be governing. They were just there for themselves. And they didn't seem to see that the country from which they were benefiting was gradually disintegrating. So there was no option. The only way out is for a new party and a new government, and luckily, we have a man who has a record of integrity, a record of discipline, a record of morality and honor. Those are the main things we need. We need such types of principles and standards and values. And with that type of cover, the other people operating under him will have a proper guideline. So, yes, that's the only way out. And we're very happy that this change has come just in time.
I see. And I hear you, Professor. I hear you mentioning, a man who is principled and disciplined and all of that. You are a human rights activist. What is his human rights record, which so many have tried to fault him for? Like, do you think we are going to see a new Buhari in terms of the human rights subject, or should Nigerians go to sleep still looking over their shoulder?
No. Yes, he had a very atrocious human rights record in his first coming. There's no question about that. Although if you look at it, probably it was because he was so concerned again about the deterioration that had occurred under the Shagari regime, and he just went overboard in trying to right it. But everybody's aware of that. He himself is aware. He's regretted it. He has proclaimed himself, and I firmly believe he's sincere, that he's a newborn Democrat. He's a born-again Democrat, and he's going to be very democratic.
Okay.
In fact, my worry now is that he may go over completely to the other side, and in the process, some measures that may need to be taken may be left uncorrected because of his fear that he will be regarded as being dictatorial. I worry more about that.
I see, and I think that's a legitimate concern for every Nigerian, especially in the light of people's expectations. People are expecting that President-elect Buhari would prosecute some members of the PDP for alleged corruption and other malpractices. He, on the other hand, is trying to work with a unified Nigeria where it doesn't seem like there's any form of witch hunting. Where does he draw the fine line, Professor?
Well, the way I see it is this. Once it comes to power and the state of the nation is thoroughly examined, anybody who is responsible for actions that undermine the viability of the state in terms of simply removing all the resources, of dealing with resources in an illegal way, state funds and things like that. I don't think really that they will have any other choice but to tell the anti-corruption agencies to investigate, and where a crime is suspected to have been committed, to charge such persons to court, and also to attempt to recover what has been stolen.
He'll be working with the same. He'll be working with the same institutions. If I'm right, the same EFCC, the same all the other paralegals. So, how much difference does he really have room to make if it's the same people in these institutions?
Well, what I have found is that a lot of these Nigerians in various agencies look at the body. Well, what's the word now? The body sign or the attitude of the government in power, and they go in accordance with that attitude. It's a very, very unfortunate body language. That's the word I wanted to use. They look at the body language.
Yeah.
If they see there's a body language that is saying, let things be as they are, I'm quite comfortable, then they will relax. Or if it's a body language in which it's firmly saying crimes must be prosecuted in discipline, will not be tolerated, the country's resources have to be protected, then they will go ahead.
I see.
The way Ribadu used to do, yes.
I see.
That's the way I see it. It's an unfortunate thing because some of us wouldn't look at anybody. If we have any office, we are holding an office, we see the terms of reference, we just do our job. But most Nigerians look at the body language of the people in power. And so the body language of Buhari is very clear.
It's a zero tolerance for
corruption and indiscipline, yes.
Okay.
And so I think you will find those agencies, ICPC, EFCC, the fraud branch of the police. There's a fraud unit, special fraud unit of the police. They will swing into action.
I see. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the Constitution, Nigeria's Constitution as it's presently set out. Is there anything you would consider changing, or is it working perfectly for this young democracy, which has, by the way, experienced several epochs of military military rule? It indeed is a very young democracy. Do you think the Constitution of Nigeria is working, or are there aspects that you would like to see tweaked?
Oh, the Constitution is a very, very faulty one. It has a lot of problems. There are so many things, but I think the most major is the issue of restructuring. That is, creating a restructured federation in which power and resources will be transferred from the federal to the federating units. As things stand, we have virtually only one government in the country, and that's the federal government. All the other governments really are like, I don't really know what word to use. They are unviable, they're not viable, they are inchoate type of governments. And half of the time, they're looking towards the federal government for funds. Every month, the commissioners of finance gravitate to Abuja to collect money and then go back and spend it. After 1 month, they all go back again. So we have a federation in name, but in effect, we have a unitary government. So there is need to restructure, to transfer resources and powers to the states, so that the federal government will be left leaner with some more specific, very common issues to look after. Things like defense, foreign affairs, currency, things like telecommunications, and so on. But I'll give you an example of what is happening. For example, the newly elected APC governors gathered in Abuja 3 days ago, informing the president-elect that they could not pay the salaries of their civil service operatives, and that the federal government should come to their aid. That itself is such an embarrassment in any country that calls itself a federation. It never happens. So we need that restructuring. That's the major problem. That's the major problem we have.
I see. So still on the Constitution, though, people are, for instance, decrying the lack of a federal. I mean, there's the federal police force, for instance.
Yes.
But there are some who are calling for state-level police. What's your take on this? Yes.
Not just only state police, even local government police, so that policing should be brought down to the community and therefore will be familiar with the areas in which they are operating. We don't want somebody who is policing a street in Lagos today and then a month later he's somewhere 700 kilometers away in the north, in a totally unfamiliar territory. So we need police at every level of governance, so that with numbers and with familiarity and with shared experience, they'll be able to cope with all the security requirements that we have. So that is one area. Definitely we need
Another area,
diversification of police sources. Yes.
Yes, sir. Another area I would like you to examine with us is the area of appointing ministers and other government operatives. General Buhari, President-elect Buhari, seems to indicate that he wants to cut down the number of his appointments, but there are certain areas that he cannot transcend. How much room does he have to navigate in this area to try to trim the size of his government?
It's difficult to trim the size of the number of ministers. That's difficult because the Constitution stipulates that every state is entitled to one minister. So straight away, we're going to have 36 ministers at least. The only thing he can do is to reduce the number of ministries and make some of the ministers of state. So you reduce the number of ministries and therefore reduce administrative overheads and so on.
Okay. So
that news, yes.
All right. Some APC members have suggested that President Goodluck Jonathan should, trying to quote here, go back to Otuoke with the National Conference report. There was a national conference. First of all, let me ask you, how useful was the national conference? And some APC members have said President Jonathan should take it away with him to Otuoke. What's your reaction?
No, I think that would be uncharitable. That would be uncharitable. The conference did some good things. They did some good things. I can't mention all of them, but I can mention one or two. For example, the conference agreed that local governments should now be created by the states and should not feature in the Constitution, because as things stand, if you want an extra local government in your state, after all the processes within the state for approval, it still has to go to the National Assembly. It's so absurd. How can, for example, somebody representing Sokoto, why should he have a say in a local government that's going to be in Warri in the south? It doesn't make sense. So the National Conference agreed that local governments are purely internal state matters and should begin and end with the states. States will create. Again, states will also fund. Because right now, we have 744 local governments being funded by the federal government at the federal level, not federal government, by the federation, because there's a federation account. They share this money. That's no good. If the state wants 1,000 local governments, fine, have it and fund it yourself. But as it is now, there is a central bank, so to speak, from which funding of local governments is coming, funding of states is coming, funding of federal government is coming. That's a very wrong way to run a federation.
I see. Finally, sir, going forward, what does Nigeria look like? What does Nigeria look like in the next 4 years? What should we expect to see in the next 4 years, briefly?
Well, we, at least in spirit, we see that a new dawn has arrived. We know that the man who is in charge now and his immediate lieutenant, the vice president-elect, Professor Shimbajo, are two upright men of strong character who are determined to make sacrifice for the progress and benefit of this country. We have no doubt about that. And what I expect to see in coming years, in the next few years, in fact, within a year, is one, a hugely improved economy, because a lot of the siphoning that is going on, the stealing, the looting, will be reduced considerably. Secondly, there'll be a sense of purpose in government. There'll be a goal, and there'll be vision, and there'll be particular direction in which government is going, and once that leadership is given, the rest of the country will follow. Then, to go to specific issues of fuel. For example, as we speak now, there's no fuel in Nigeria. We are exporting crude oil all over the world, but we have no refined product to use in our own country. So in effect, we now re-import what we exported. That is a terribly wasteful and irresponsible practice, which only people who hate this country will allow to continue to plague us. So I expect this government within 2 years to work towards having all refining of petroleum products done in this country. In fact, we should be able to export refined products. I also expect the electricity situation to improve. We privatized so many companies, and contrary to the usual benefits of privatization, there is no improvement in the light electricity situation. In fact, it has worsened. It's crashed to about 2,000 kilowatts or megawatts a day, instead of over 4 that it used to be after full privatization. it shows you that there was something wrong in that privatization. Maybe the people who were allowed to take over this, to buy these generating stations and distribution companies were people who were not either not qualified or not prepared to do it, because I can't understand a situation in which you have this sharp drop. So, and then in education and in medicine and so on, we expect to see a gradual advance so that in 4 years, Nigeria will have achieved a standard more closely related to the level of income that the country is generating and the level of manpower which we have.
Thank you so much, Professor Itse Sagay. Such impeccable insights. We really appreciate your time and your contribution, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Sarah TV, stay tuned. More on this platform. Don't go away.